My name is James Dees, and the show I have chosen as my personal favorite media program is the self-proclaimed show about nothing, Seinfeld. My favorite sitcom of all time, and indeed one of my favorite shows of all time. I can remember growing up in the 90s and watching Seinfeld with my family. It was actually one of the few shows that we watched as a familial unit, and some of my fondest memories as a child include gathering in the living room around the television set on Thursday nights and watching Seinfeld as a family. Um, One way that Seinfeld has influenced my life personally is by shaping um, my opinion of comedy, um, and shaping the way I view comedy as a whole. The purest form of comedy, in my opinion, has to include clever witticisms, um, comedic timing, and some elements of physical comedy as well. And I remember specifically in Seinfeld that even though many of the jokes were raunchy or provocative for the time, my sister and I didn't understand many of those jokes when we were younger, but those are jokes I can go back to now, and now that I'm older, and understand and appreciate. Um, but even at a younger age, we were laughing at Kramer's crazy antics and his physical comedy. We were laughing at Elaine's little kicks, at George's neuroticism, and all of the many quotes that were popularized by the show. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Master of your domain, um, yada yada yada. No soup for you. I could go on and on. There's so many quotable lines from Seinfeld that have permeated our society. Even to this day, Seinfeld has a massive following and a rabid fan base, myself included. In fact, Rolling Stone magazine's website in January of 2015, which is fairly recent, conducted a survey of their subscribers uh, in which they asked them to rank the top 10 television programs of the 1990s. Not just sitcoms, all television programs. And Seinfeld wound up taking home the gold in that category. It won the best TV show of the 1990s. They beat out every other television program from the 90s, including Friends, The Simpsons, The X-Files, Northern Exposure, all these very popular television shows. And I believe it even crossed the barriers of comedy fans versus drama fans. I remember everyone I knew watched Seinfeld when it was still running, when it was still on NBC. Even people who didn't like comedies watched Seinfeld because it was such a cultural phenomenon. Rolling Stone proclaims in the aforementioned article that Seinfeld elevated the art of the sitcom, and that Rolling Stone article is titled Readers Poll: the best TV show of the 1990s. I believe this statement was accurate, based simply off of the observations that I had made previously. It appealed to a wider audience, and it elevated that art form of the sitcom and of television. John Lynch of Business Insider, under their entertainment tab of their website, wrote an article on Seinfeld, and in this article he states that one of the most electrifying and influential programs in TV history is Seinfeld. He then goes on to say that it revolutionized the medium of television altogether. And this article was written August of last year, titled 5 Ways Seinfeld Changed the Way We Watch TV. And it just goes to show you the long-lasting effect that this series has had on our society as a whole. The main communication or mass communication principle or theory that I would personally apply to this show would be that of, or the concept of the skyscraper analogy. As I said before, Seinfeld appealed to a huge audience. So in the skyscraper analogy, you have the high culture, the middle culture, and the low culture. And I think Seinfeld was the ultimate middle culture program, but it still appealed to the higher and the lower classes So it was able to amass this huge, incalculable viewership in the 90s that has really carried over again to the present day, where you had this amalgamation of highbrow comedy seekers who could appreciate the show's clever writing style, with the lower class culture or the lower culture audience who appreciated the show's slapstick comedy or physical comedy, that elements in the show that the show had to offer. Um, this convergence of the two cultures at either end of the cultural spectrum, in the middle, ultimately made Seinfeld one of the most successful comedies and indeed TV shows ever. And it is my personal favorite television program of all time.